You are judged before you speak, before you act, before you even arrive. When you look poor, the world does not merely ignore you, it quietly conspires against you. Doors hesitate, respect delays, intentions harden. This is not about money alone. It is about perception, symbolism, and the brutal economy of appearances that governs human psychology. You feel it in the way eyes pass over you, in the way advice replaces opportunity, in the way patience is demanded only from those who have nothing to lose. Tonight, we will explore a truth few dare to name: how seeming poor reshapes the way power, trust, and mercy are distributed, and why this mechanism has endured across centuries. If this resonates, comment the phrase "I see the game" below. Subscribe, like this video, and stay until the end, because what you are about to hear may change how you carry yourself in a world that rewards symbols more than substance. Long before modern capitalism gave this phenomenon a name, thinkers observed it with cold clarity. In Renaissance courts, in ancient cities, and in rigid social hierarchies, appearance was never superficial. It was a signal. Poverty was not seen as a circumstance, but as a moral stain, a proof of weakness, disorder, or divine disfavor. Power structures learned early that controlling symbols was easier than correcting injustice. Philosophically, this reveals a dark truth about human perception. We confuse visible outcomes with inner worth. Over time, this idea was hidden beneath comforting myths about merit and fairness, because admitting it would expose how fragile our moral narratives truly are. Today, this ancient bias survives in subtler forms, feeding modern wounds like shame, invisibility, and self-doubt, while quietly shaping who is heard, who is trusted, and who is dismissed before a single word is spoken. When you look poor, something invisible shifts in the minds of others, and most of the time, it happens without cruelty or conscious intent. It happens automatically. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures, and the brain is lazy. It looks for shortcuts. One of the oldest shortcuts is this: visible lack is unconsciously translated into inner lack. If you appear to have little, people assume you are little. Not morally, not verbally, but psychologically. This is the first mechanism working against you. Before you open your mouth, your appearance has already told a story on your behalf, and that story is rarely generous. You are not perceived as unlucky. You are perceived as unfinished, unreliable, or out of sync with success. This perception shapes everything that follows. You notice it in small interactions first. The tone people use with you is slightly slower, slightly more instructive. Advice is given where respect should be offered. You are explained to rather than listened to. This is not because you are unintelligent, but because your appearance has placed you into a category where competence is questioned by default. The world claims to value equality, but psychologically, it operates on hierarchy. Hierarchy needs markers, and poverty, or the appearance of it, becomes one of the most powerful markers of low rank. Once assigned, this rank follows you silently into conversations, negotiations, and even friendships. What makes this especially cruel is that the system reinforces itself. When you are treated as lesser, you begin to adjust your behavior. You speak less. You ask for permission. You over-explain. You try to justify your presence. These behaviors, born from adaptation, are then used as further proof that you deserve the position you were placed in. This is the loop. You did not create it, but you are forced to live inside it. The more you comply with the role of the invisible, the more invisible you become. And the world, without ever saying it out loud, feels validated in its original judgment. At a deeper level, This phenomenon is not about money at all. It is about order and fear. Humans fear chaos. They fear randomness. When they see someone who appears poor, they instinctively look for a reason that restores order to their worldview. It is more comforting to believe that your situation reflects your choices or your character than to accept that life is unstable and unfair. If your condition is your fault, then their comfort feels earned and secure. This psychological defense protects them from anxiety, but it sacrifices your dignity in the process. You may have noticed that the same words spoken by different people are received differently, depending on how those people look. When you look poor, your ideas are filtered through suspicion. When you look prosperous, the same ideas sound insightful. This is not imagination. It is cognitive bias in action. Authority in the human mind is visual before it is rational. We trust symbols faster than substance. Clothing, posture, grooming, and confidence all function as signals of competence long before logic has a chance to intervene. When those signals are missing, your words must work harder to earn half the trust. This is why effort alone often fails to change outcomes. You can work harder, be kinder, be more skilled, and still feel resisted by invisible friction. That friction is perception. Machiavellian thinking does not ask whether this is fair, it asks whether this is real. And it is real. The mistake many people make is believing that truth automatically rises to the surface. In reality, truth often waits behind the gate of appearance, and if the gate is closed, truth never gets heard. Another mechanism at play is what can be called social risk management. People align themselves with those who appear to be winning because association feels safer. When you look poor, others unconsciously calculate the cost of being connected to you. They fear being dragged down, judged by association, or exposed to discomfort. Even compassionate people feel this instinct. As a result, opportunities move away from you not because you are dangerous, but because you are perceived as costly. You are seen as a liability before you are seen as a human being. This is also why generosity toward you often comes in the form of pity rather than partnership. Pity keeps distance. Partnership requires equality. When someone pities you, they feel superior and safe. When they partner with you, they must acknowledge your power. The appearance of poverty strips you of perceived power, so the only acceptable interaction becomes charity, advice, or avoidance. None of these create growth. They only preserve hierarchy. There is a silent humiliation in this that rarely gets named. You begin to feel that you must prove your worth constantly. Every interaction becomes a performance. You over-deliver. You anticipate rejection. You apologize for existing. Over time, this erodes your inner authority. And here is the most dangerous part. Once your inner authority weakens, even a change in external circumstances may not immediately free you. You carry the posture of the judged even when the judgment is no longer present. This is how the system reproduces itself inside you. Machiavellian realism teaches that power does not respond to fairness. It responds to perception, leverage, and control. When you look poor, you are assumed to lack all three. People do not expect you to enforce boundaries. They do not expect you to walk away. They do not expect consequences. This expectation shapes how boldly others treat you. Disrespect grows where resistance is not anticipated, not because people are evil, but because human behavior expands to fill the space allowed to it. Think about how differently mistakes are treated depending on who makes them. When a person of status fails, the failure is framed as complexity or bad luck. When a person who looks poor fails, the failure is framed as incompetence. This difference is not logical, it is symbolic. Status acts as armor. Poverty acts as exposure. One error confirms a narrative that was already waiting to be confirmed. What is rarely discussed is how early this conditioning begins. From childhood, you are taught to associate success with appearance. Cleanliness, confidence, and material signs become shorthand for virtue. By the time you are an adult, this association feels natural, unquestionable. Challenging it would require people to confront their own superficiality. So instead, they call it realism. They say the world is just like this, as if that absolves them of participation. This does not mean that everyone who looks poor is treated badly, nor that everyone who looks rich is respected. But it does mean that the baseline is skewed. You start from a disadvantage that others do not have to overcome. You begin every interaction in debt, socially speaking, while others begin with credit. This debt must be repaid through extra effort, patience, and self-control, often without recognition. There is also a spiritual dimension to this struggle. When you are repeatedly treated as lesser, you begin to internalize the gaze of others. You see yourself through their eyes. This is how shame takes root. Shame is not the belief that you did something wrong. It is the belief that you are wrong. And shame is one of the most effective tools of control ever created. A person who feels ashamed polices themselves. They limit their desires, silence their voice, and accept conditions they would otherwise reject. The tragedy is that many people mistake humility for invisibility. True humility is inner strength without arrogance. Invisibility is learned powerlessness. When you look poor and are treated accordingly, you are often encouraged to accept this treatment as moral growth. Be patient. Be grateful. Be modest. But patience without power becomes submission. Gratitude without dignity becomes obedience. Modesty without choice becomes erasure. This is where the Machiavellian insight becomes uncomfortable. If the world responds to symbols, then refusing to engage with symbols is not moral superiority. It is strategic blindness. You are not rewarded for being unseen. You are simply unseen. And an unseen person cannot influence outcomes, protect themselves, or change their position. The world does not correct this imbalance on its own. It waits for you to understand the rules or be crushed by them. Yet, even here, questions remain unanswered. Is changing your appearance a betrayal of authenticity, or is it an act of survival? Can you manipulate perception without losing yourself? Where is the line between self-respect and deception? These questions linger for a reason. They force you to confront not just how the world treats you, but how you choose to move within it. And in the next part, we will go deeper into these tensions, where ego, illusion, and power quietly collide. Once you understand that appearance shapes power, the next trap reveals itself: the ego's resistance to this truth. The ego wants to believe that who you are inside should be enough, that the world should recognize depth without symbols, that dignity should not need decoration. This belief feels noble, but it often hides fear. Fear of being seen as manipulative. Fear of playing a game you did not choose. Fear of admitting that the world does not reward essence, only signals. The ego calls this resistance authenticity, but in many cases, it is simply avoidance, and avoidance is expensive. Modern society deepens this illusion by preaching self-expression while punishing those who express weakness. You are told to be yourself, but only if that self fits an approved image. If your self looks tired, worn, under-resourced, or uncertain, the same society quietly withdraws respect. This creates an internal conflict. You feel pressured to perform confidence while being denied the conditions that generate it. You are expected to radiate value before being granted value. This contradiction produces anxiety, resentment, and self-doubt, which then leak into your posture, your voice, and your decisions, reinforcing the very image you are trying to escape. There is also a subtle moralization of success that poisons perception. Prosperity is framed as virtue and poverty as failure. Not openly, not explicitly, but emotionally. People respond warmly to those they assume are winning because success reassures them that the system works. When you look poor, you remind them that it might not. That reminder makes them uncomfortable, so they distance themselves from you psychologically. This is not hatred, it is denial. You become a mirror they do not want to look into. Here lies a painful paradox. The more you need compassion, the less likely you are to receive it. When you appear strong, people offer help freely. When you appear weak, help comes with conditions, judgment, or surveillance. You are monitored, corrected, and managed rather than supported. This turns assistance into control. What was supposed to lift you becomes another structure that keeps you small. Many people sense this intuitively and refuse help altogether, choosing isolation over humiliation. But isolation has its own cost: invisibility. Another layer of the problem is time perception. When you look poor, people assume your time is less valuable. They cancel on you. They make you wait. They give you vague answers. They expect availability without commitment. This trains you to devalue your own time as well. You begin to accept delays, excuses, and disrespect as normal. Over time, you stop protecting your schedule, your energy, and your attention. And once your time is treated as disposable, so are you. Machiavellian thought is often misunderstood as cold or cruel, but at its core, it is observational. It asks you to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. One of its hardest lessons is this: people do not respond to suffering with justice. They respond with hierarchy. When someone falls, others unconsciously step back to avoid being pulled down. This is why public failure is so dangerous. It reshapes your image faster than private struggle ever could. There is also a collective illusion around struggle itself. Struggle is romanticized only after it ends. While you are in it, you are treated as a warning. Only once you emerge are you celebrated as an example. Until then, your hardship makes others uneasy. They prefer stories with resolution, not reality in progress. So while you are still becoming, you are discounted. This is why waiting for recognition before you look the part is a losing strategy. Recognition follows presentation, not the other way around. The ego resists this because it wants validation without transformation. It wants the world to adjust before it does. But power never moves first. Power waits. It waits to see who understands the rules and who refuses them. Those who refuse are not punished directly. They are simply bypassed. Life continues around them. Opportunities flow elsewhere. This quiet exclusion feels personal, but it is structural. Another uncomfortable truth is that many people unconsciously protect the hierarchy because it gives their own position meaning. If you rise without the expected markers, you destabilize the system. You become an anomaly. Anomalies are threatening. This is why sudden success from someone who looked poor often triggers suspicion rather than admiration. People look for shortcuts, fraud, or luck, anything that preserves the belief that appearance predicts outcome. Accepting that you changed your position through strategy would force them to question their own passivity. There is also a deep internalization of scarcity that comes with looking poor. Scarcity changes how you think. You focus on survival, not projection. You optimize for immediate relief rather than long-term positioning. This makes sense in the short term, but it traps you in a cycle where you are always reacting, never framing. Power belongs to those who frame situations, not those who merely endure them. When your energy is consumed by coping, you cannot shape perception. And when you cannot shape perception, you remain subject to it. Modern culture adds another trap, the celebration of transparency. You are encouraged to share your struggles openly, to be vulnerable publicly. While vulnerability can build connection in intimate settings, in hierarchical systems, it often lowers perceived status. Not because vulnerability is wrong, but because it is misused. When shared without power, vulnerability becomes exposure. People learn where you hurt, but not how to respect you. They see your wounds, not your boundaries. This is why some people instinctively harden themselves as they rise. They are not becoming cruel, they are becoming unreadable. Unreadability protects power. When others cannot easily categorize you, they hesitate. Hesitation creates space. Space allows leverage. Those who look poor are over-categorized. Their story is written for them before they speak. Breaking this requires disrupting expectation, not arguing against it. There is also a spiritual danger hidden here. When you accept mistreatment as fate, you confuse endurance with virtue. You tell yourself that suffering silently makes you moral. But morality without agency becomes martyrdom, and martyrdom benefits everyone except the martyr. You shrink your desires, rationalize disrespect, and call it wisdom. But wisdom that cannot protect life is incomplete. The conflict between desire and meaning becomes sharp at this stage. You desire dignity, autonomy, and influence, but you fear becoming someone you despise. You fear becoming superficial, manipulative, or false. Yet the deeper truth is this: using symbols does not mean you are empty. It means you understand language. Appearance is a language. Refusing to speak it does not make you pure. It makes you misunderstood. Another paradox emerges when you begin to improve your presentation. Some people will accuse you of changing, of becoming arrogant, of forgetting where you came from. This accusation often comes from those who benefited from your previous low position. When you looked poor, you were safe to them. You made them feel superior or comfortable. When you change, you threaten that comfort. Guilt is used to pull you back down. Loyalty is weaponized against growth. At the deepest level, this struggle is about sovereignty. Who decides your value, your inner compass, or the outer gaze? The trap is thinking you must choose one. True power integrates both. You anchor your worth internally while managing your image externally. You do not beg the world to see you. You present yourself in a way the world understands. This is not deception, it is translation. The world is not moved by fairness, but it is moved by coherence. When your inner authority aligns with your outer signals, resistance weakens. People sense consistency. They trust what feels stable. When you look poor, but speak with certainty, the mismatch confuses them. Confusion invites scrutiny. Scrutiny often turns against you. Alignment removes friction. Still, a final tension remains unresolved. How do you change the way you are perceived without becoming consumed by appearance? How do you use symbols without being owned by them? How do you protect your dignity while playing a game built on illusion? These questions matter because without practical grounding, insight becomes frustration. Understanding alone does not free you, application does. And that is where we turn next, toward concrete actions that can shift not only how the world sees you, but how you see yourself moving within it. The first shift you must make is internal, because without it, every external change will feel fake and exhausting. You must stop asking whether you deserve respect and start assuming responsibility for signaling it. This is not arrogance, it is orientation. You do not wait for the world to validate your worth before you act with authority. You act with authority so the world adjusts its behavior around you. This begins with posture, pace, and restraint. Slow your movements. Speak fewer words, but let them land. Urgency signals need, and need invites control. Calm signals choice, and choice creates leverage. Even before resources change, your nervous system must stop broadcasting desperation. Next, you must understand that presentation is not about luxury. It is about coherence. Looking poor is rarely about lacking money alone. It is about inconsistency. Worn shoes, distracted speech, apologetic tone, cluttered appearance, chaotic timing. These details tell a story of disorder. Your task is to reduce noise. Choose simplicity over excess, clean lines over decoration, neutral colors over loud ones. Not because these things are superior, but because they communicate stability. Stability is the currency of trust. When people sense stability, they relax. When they relax, they listen. One of the most powerful yet overlooked practices is protecting your time publicly. Arrive when you say you will. Leave when you decide to leave. Do not over-explain your schedule. Do not justify your absence. When you treat your time as valuable, others recalibrate their behavior around it. This feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to accommodating everyone. But accommodation without boundaries teaches people to take without consequence. Boundaries are not walls, they are signals of self-respect. Another crucial technique is controlled visibility. Stop oversharing your struggles in spaces where power is at play. Vulnerability belongs in safe relationships, not in hierarchical environments. When you disclose hardship to those who do not share your fate, you give them information without gaining protection. Instead, practice selective opacity. You do not lie, but you do not explain everything. Silence is not weakness, it is unfinished information. Unfinished information creates curiosity, and curiosity shifts power dynamics in your favor. You must also audit your language. Remove self-minimizing phrases from your speech. Stop saying you are just trying, still learning, or not really an expert. These phrases invite correction and diminish authority. Replace them with grounded statements. You are not claiming perfection. You are claiming presence. Speak from experience, not apology. When you make a mistake, acknowledge it briefly and move on. Lingering on error reinforces the image of incompetence. There is also a physical ritual that matters more than people admit. Grooming. Not extravagance, but intention. Cleanliness, fit, and consistency matter because they show that you take yourself seriously even when circumstances are difficult. This is not vanity, it is discipline. Discipline creates self-trust. Self-trust changes how you carry yourself, and how you carry yourself changes how others approach you. The body leads the mind more often than the mind leads the body. Another powerful application is strategic withdrawal. When you sense disrespect, do not argue. Reduce access, shorten responses, delay availability. Absence forces recalculation. People value what they cannot easily reach. This is not manipulation, it is feedback. You are teaching others how to treat you by adjusting proximity. Over time, those who cannot respect you will fall away, and those who can will adapt. You must also reframe how you seek opportunity. Stop asking to be included. Position yourself to be noticed. Contribution before request is key. Show competence quietly. Deliver results without announcement. Let others discover your value rather than be convinced of it. Discovery feels rewarding to the ego of the observer. persuasion feels threatening. This is why humility paired with effectiveness is so potent. You do not beg for recognition. You create conditions where recognition becomes inevitable. Another daily practice is controlling emotional leakage. When you look poor, frustration often leaks through micro-expressions, tone, and impatience. Train yourself to pause before reacting. Power listens more than it speaks. Reactivity signals loss of control. When you remain composed under pressure, people reassess you. Composure is read as inner wealth. Inner wealth is often mistaken for outer success. You must also redefine humility correctly. True humility is not shrinking. It is accuracy. You know what you can do, and you do not pretend you cannot. False humility is a defense against judgment. It preemptively lowers expectations to avoid disappointment, but it also lowers respect. Practice factual self-assessment, neither inflate nor deflate. State what you offer clearly and let outcomes speak. One of the hardest obstacles you will face is guilt. Guilt for wanting more. Guilt for changing. Guilt for no longer fitting the role others assign to you. You must understand that guilt is often the emotional tax imposed by systems that benefit from your stagnation. Growth disrupts familiar dynamics. Not everyone will celebrate it. This does not mean you are wrong. It means you are moving. Another essential practice is creating small, private wins. Do not announce your plans prematurely. Let progress accumulate quietly. Visible struggle invites interference. Silent improvement creates surprise. Surprise shifts perception rapidly. People respond differently to someone who appears to have momentum. Momentum suggests inevitability. Inevitability attracts support. You must also be careful with who you associate publicly. Association signals status. Spend time with those who reflect the direction you are moving, not only the place you came from. This does not mean abandoning anyone. It means being intentional about exposure. Environments shape behavior. Behavior shapes perception. Perception shapes opportunity. Finally, anchor everything in inner sovereignty. External presentation without inner alignment will hollow you out. You are not becoming someone else. You are removing distortions that kept others from seeing you clearly. Use appearance as a tool, not an identity. Let your values remain steady while your signals evolve. This balance is what keeps you grounded while navigating a world that responds to symbols more than essence. This path is not about becoming ruthless. It is about becoming legible in a system that ignores what it cannot easily read. When you stop waiting for fairness and start practicing clarity, resistance weakens. The world may not become kinder, but it will become more navigable. And navigation, not approval, is what ultimately restores your power. What you have seen through this reflection is not a moral judgment, but a structural truth. When you look poor, the world does not attack you openly. It diminishes you quietly. It delays you, doubts you, overlooks you, and then pretends nothing happened. This is why the pain feels vague yet constant. You sense resistance, but you cannot always point to its source. Now you know where it lives, in perception, in symbols, in the unspoken rules that govern how value is assigned long before merit is evaluated. The most dangerous illusion was never poverty itself, but the belief that patience alone would correct how you are treated. Time does not heal misperception. Silence does not educate power. The world does not wake up one day and suddenly see you clearly because you endured enough. It responds when signals change, when coherence appears, when inner authority finally matches outer presence. This is not a betrayal of who you are. It is the completion of it. You are not shallow for understanding appearances. You are not corrupt for learning the language of power. You are naive only if you refuse to see that every human system runs on signs, whether spiritual, social, or material. Refusing to engage with those signs does not make you virtuous. It makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability without protection becomes a cage disguised as humility. The deeper question is not whether the world is fair. It is whether you are willing to take responsibility for how you are read, whether you will continue to internalize the gaze that diminishes you, or whether you will step into alignment and let the world adjust. Because once you do, something subtle happens. People speak differently to you. They hesitate before crossing boundaries. They listen more closely, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. So ask yourself this, honestly and without drama. Are you attached to being right about how unfair the world is? Or are you ready to be effective within it? One keeps you morally clean and powerless. The other gives you leverage, movement, and choice. If this resonated, leave a comment with the phrase, "I choose clarity," so I know you understood the deeper message. Like this video, subscribe, and keep walking this path of lucidity with me. Because the moment you stop looking invisible, the game changes, and so do you.